Hiya, four. This week we're going to be writing our biographies. I'm going to do a little model for you to show you the sorts of things that we're looking for while you're doing your writing. So I'm going to share that with you today. Okay, so this week we are going to be finishing writing it. I am looking for you to be writing in paragraphs. I'm looking for you to be writing in full sentences. I'm hoping that you're going to use those expanded noun phrases and prepositional phrases that you wrote last week in sentences. That was the whole point of you doing it, so that you could use those today. So you can actually just lift those from the work that you did last week and put them into your writing today. I'm hoping for some fronted adverbials, hopefully some possessive apostrophes, and some subordinating conjunctions. So that's all the sorts of things that we're looking for. It says there are some examples on the next page because this is what you did last Monday. So just to remind you what each thing is, you've got an expanded noun phrase, which is two adjectives or one adjective with a noun. A fronted adverbial goes at the beginning of a sentence with a comma over here. A possessive apostrophe, so Tim's house, his mum's idea. Some subordinating conjunctions, so I've put he loves his family, although he has to spend a lot of time away from home. And having a comma in a list. So they're the different things that I'm expecting you to have in your writing. Okay, so I've written my first few bullet points in my notes from last week, so you should have these too for your biography. Now, my first section was introduction, so I've written introduction ready. I've got notes here just in bullet points. So I've got Tim Peake, British astronaut, worked on the ISS, famous for being the first British astronaut spacewalker. So I need to put those things into full sentences now. So I'm just going to keep those there ahead of me, and I'm going to start my writing, trying to think about my handwriting and the fact that I want it to be nice and neat, but remembering that it's not too important, as we are probably going to be writing this up neater later. So I'm going to put in my first expanded noun phrase. Who worked in the International Space Station, or the ISS. So this biography is about Tim Peake. He is a famous British astronaut who worked on the International Space Station. Tim was famous for being the first British astronaut to do a spacewalk he is also well known for taking part in many interesting activities whilst in space. So this is just my introduction. Obviously, it's just telling you a little bit about who Tim Peake was and the sorts of things that he has done during his career. Obviously, I haven't gone into too much detail because I want to make sure that I've got enough to talk about throughout the rest of the biography. Okay, so now I'm moving on to early life. So I've got born April 7th, 1972, Chichester, West Sussex, England. Father took him to air shows. 13, joined military at school. Learned to fly with Air Force. 16, decided to be pilot in the army, and 1992 graduated. Now, if I just wrote those kinds of bullet points, not really explaining any of them, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense, and people that were reading it wouldn't really know anything about Tim Peake from looking at those bullet points. So I've got to try and think about how I can put those into really good sentences. And this is where I can start to introduce my expanded noun phrases, where I can start to introduce my fronted adverbials. It's also really important at this point to think about whether I've used the word or the name Tim too much. So while I'm writing, I'm not going to make every single sentence Tim Peake was, Tim Peake was, when Tim was young, when Tim was this age, when Tim was that age. I've got to try and think about how I can vary that. So for some I might put he, and for some I might put Tim. So you should see that as I'm writing. So we'll start with Tim, as it's the beginning of a paragraph. Tim Peake was born on the 7th of April 1972 in Chichester. And if you'll see, Chichester has got a capital C because it's a place. West Sussex, capitals again, in England. Okay, first sentence done. Now, I've got here, father took him to air shows. So I want to be able to put that into a sentence where maybe I could use one of my fronted adverbials that I know about. So I think I'm going to put when he was young, and what comes after my fronted adverbial, comma, I hear you cry. His father took him to many air shows around where he lived. So, I've got my fronted adverbial here with my comma. I haven't just said air shows, I've said many air shows, so I've extended it slightly. I've also had he and his and him and he. So I've used he, his, him a few times. I want to expand on this a little bit. I don't want to just say it took him to many air shows. What was important about the fact that he was taken to air shows? It meant that he got to see different aircraft. It meant that he got to understand more about aircraft. So this meant that he was able to see a variety of aircraft. Okay, so I've done this section, I've done this section, I've done this. I'm now on to 13, joined military at school. So I think that's a new paragraph there. So I could use another fronted adverbial now. So by the age of 13, which I've done in words and not numbers, by the age of 13, he joined military school. Where I've got to think about what he did there. So where he was able to learn about the army. He then learned to fly with the Air Force. So he then learned to fly with the Air Force. Now, I've just had a thought, and this is good to do this when you're writing. I've written, by the age of 13, he joined the military school where he was able to learn about the army. He then learned to fly with the Air Force. I could probably change that slightly because I don't need to have he that many times, and it's a new paragraph. So I could cross out that he and change it to a Tim. Now, this is where I'd like to maybe use one of my expanded noun phrases from last week. So I've talked about these two. I've got 16 decided to be a pilot in the army. So, Tim was extremely dedicated. The reception children are pretending to be bees outside the classroom door. That's what that noise is. And was a bright young man. Due to this, he decided to be a pilot in the army at the age of 16. And then I'm going to finish that paragraph there. So let's just have a little look through. I've got fronted adverbials. I've got an expanded noun phrase. Another fronted adverbial there. I've also used Tim, he, Tim, he. So then I've spread that out. Last little bit then was that he graduated in 1992. So I know from reading that if he was born in 1972 and he graduated in 1992, then he was 20 when he graduated. So when Tim was 20, fronted adverbial, comma, he graduated from military school and joined the British Army. There I have my fronted adverbial and a little bit of extra information here. So I have now done both of these sections, all finished, and here is what I have written. So you can see from here, this is section 1 and this is section 2. It's not short. I didn't write it in 5 minutes. I really thought about what I was doing. I thought about adding in my expanded noun phrases. I thought about adding in my fronted adverbials. I thought about where I was going to put my information and how I was going to put it into sentences. This should not take you a really short amount of time. It should be something that you're taking your time with and putting in 100% effort to try and use all those things that you've learned about and all those things you've done over the last 2 weeks. I hope this has been helpful. Make sure that you do everything we've talked about and use everything that you have done over the last few weeks, and enjoy writing. We'd love to see what you end up with at the end of the week.